outdoorsy. I went to summer camp, and that's where I got into hiking as a kid. I've always been into horses, so I've been outdoorsy, but not in an athletic, like, workout type of capacity. And then as I got older, I really only just kept the horse part of it. So I've always been involved with horses, but I wouldn't call that being athletic. In the summer camps I went to, they were summer camps for girls, just girls. And yes, they took us out to hike these mountains here in New Hampshire. So they were up in the middle of the White Mountains. So hiked Mount Washington as a kid, hiked the mountain we're doing today, Lafayette, as a kid in summer camp. We would go on backpacking trips and carry everything up into the mountains and spend a night or two up there and hike. So it was pretty rugged hiking that I did, particularly as I got older in camp and the hikes got harder. So yeah, it was pretty rugged hiking back then. Now I went away to college down south and didn't really hike for a while. After college, I got married, and we'd come visit my relatives in the summertime, and I picked it back up a little bit then, because I wanted to show the mountains to my husband, and so we hiked Mount Washington. We hiked a couple of the other 4,000 footers, but it was just something we'd do once a year. We'd hike a mountain on vacation. That was the extent of the hiking I did, and only until we had kids. So once we had kids, it just became way too complicated, and I stopped hiking at that point. So in my late 20s, I pretty much stopped hiking. So to back up, it turns out in 2007, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. That's when I was diagnosed. In retrospect, I've had rheumatoid arthritis for a long time. It was just diagnosed in 2007. So as part of that diagnosis, I had like baseline x-rays taken of like my hands and my feet and my lungs. And it was during that process that it was discovered that I had some growths on my lungs. And after some additional testing, I ended up going into Boston to Brigham and Women's and having actually that part of my lung removed. So, and it turns out the growths were not malignant, but they definitely had to come out, and that part of my lung had to come out with them. So, yeah, I'm down part of my lung at this point. I never said, I need to make a change, I need to get fit, and I need to get healthy. Sadly, I started CrossFit for solely the reason that I couldn't, my horse situation, I told you I was always into horses, and I had one winter where I didn't have a horse to ride. And I'm the type of person who typically doesn't leave my house once it gets dark in the winter. It's cold, it's dark, I don't leave my house, and I work from home. So I knew without a horse to make me leave my house, I would spend the entire winter, I would go days without leaving my house if I didn't make myself leave my house. So I was like, I'll take up something to pass the winter. Maybe yoga, I don't know, maybe a class, maybe CrossFit, maybe something, just until I get my horse back in the spring, just to keep me busy. And I had a friend who had started CrossFit a couple of years prior, and he would post about it on Facebook, and he was really passionate about it, and it sounded like he was having a great time with it. So I'm like, I'll do CrossFit. And then I started CrossFit, and I realized, oh my God, I am so out of shape. This is really bad. Yeah. So there are I first started, I always lifted with an empty barbell. If it involved, anything involved overhead work, forget the barbell, I'd have to use a PVC pipe. If it was the first time I tried to do an overhead squat, I couldn't do an overhead squat while holding a PVC pipe. I was sent off to do mobility exercises while the rest of the class did overhead squats. It was really bad. And then it made me realize just how slowly I had been letting myself get out of shape. And up to that point, I'd be like, I ride horses, I work in the barn, throwing bales of hay around, I'm carrying 50-pound bags of grain, I'm cleaning stalls. I'm active, I'm good, I'm better than the average person my age. And then I realized that I had slowly let things decline without noticing. Like maybe I wasn't stacking bales of hay as high as I once did. That leading horses in and out, if I was going up a hill, I'd get really out of breath. But it had crept up on me and I hadn't realized it. And then I started CrossFit and it was really eye-opening. And it was like, this can't be something I do for 2 or 3 months and then just walk away from. I need to keep doing this. I need to improve my physical well-being, because I had no idea how much I had let it slide until I started CrossFit. The 3-month temporary occasion that I thought it would be. I'm in it for the long haul. But with that being said, I was so unfit, and combined with the rheumatoid arthritis, I couldn't push myself as hard as maybe other people could, because I would get sore. I mean, beyond sore. I just physically couldn't do it more than a couple times a week. So yes, I was all in, but it wasn't an everyday all in. It was as I could manage. And really at first it was, if I went 3 days in a week, that was like a really big week for me. That was all I could do. But I did it as I could. A good example would be when the first time overhead squats came into play. And I tried it with a 15-pound training bar. I couldn't do it. Eric was the coach that day. Eric then handed me a PVC pipe. Still couldn't do it with a PVC pipe. So he then brought me aside and he's just like, here's some mobility exercises. So you work on this, and got me started on those, made sure I was doing them correctly, and then kind of went back into helping the class. But that would be an example of when I simply couldn't do something. They're like, no problem, here's how we'll get you to be able to do something. Everything can be adapted, no matter what you have to work around. Started noticing results really immediately, but the bar was set very low. So it didn't take much for me to notice the results. But again, because it's not something I could go all in at 5 days a week, my upward trajectory was very slow. And so I was in CrossFit for 1.5 years before I felt like I could even attempt to hike again. So if I was in it for like really short-term results, it wouldn't have worked. You had to be in it for the long haul. I mean, it took 1.5 years to get me hiking again. I was in CrossFit for a full year before I could run a mile without walking. That's how unfit I was. Before I started CrossFit, I might have a riding lesson and I would have to ask for a walk break because I was physically like exhausted from whatever exercises I was just doing on my horse. I'd be like, I need to walk for a minute. Okay, I don't ever need a walk break. I mean, I'll give my horse a walk break. If my horse needs a walk break, I don't need a walk break anymore. That became noticeable within about 6 months of CrossFit. I became a much better rider. In a non-physical sense, CrossFit has made me a much more empathetic rider, because the physical struggles that I had with CrossFit to learn to do these movements, learn an overhead squat when I couldn't do it. If I'm now asking my horse to do something that my horse finds very physically difficult, I'm much more patient and much more like, okay, we'll break it down into little steps. Much better than I did before I started CrossFit. It made me a much more empathetic rider as well. I've always loved the mountains. Before I started CrossFit, I would drive through these mountains and I think, wow, I'm really glad I hiked them back when I was young and I could do it. I'm really glad I had that experience, because those days are behind me now. So as I became fitter, ran my first mile without walking, I'm like, hey, maybe this is something I can get back into. And so a year and a half later, I started hiking some of the shorter hikes. I did a Prezi Traverse where I hiked all 7 of the Presidential's mountains, the tallest in New Hampshire, but I broke it up over 4 days, 3 nights. I spent 3 nights. I went from hut to hut. It took me 3 nights and 4 days to hike all of the Presidentials that first year and a half back. And then it was either the next year or the year after, I hiked them all in a day. So it took me 4 days and 3 nights when I first came out of the gate with my hiking again. I've done them now 3 times in one day. 3 separate occasions in one day. So yeah. So that really opened up being able to hike here in New Hampshire. The mountains are so rugged here. It really sets you up well to go elsewhere and hike. So last year, a friend and I went to Europe and we hiked about 55 miles of the Tour de Mont Blanc through Italy, Switzerland, and France through the Alps, and it was the most mind-blowing, amazing experience ever. I never could have done that ever in a million years without the base CrossFit cabin, and it was like one of the most monumental experiences I've ever had, and it was truly astounding to be able to experience that. Once we went to Europe and hiked, and we were like, wow, we survived that. We handled that great. Where else can we go? Because this is kind of fun. And as we were hiking in Europe, my friend and I got to pass the time, and we'd be like, all right, let's put together a hiking wish list. Like, what else can we do? And Kilimanjaro was on that list. And it's just one of those things that maybe at the time it's like, oh, that would be fun to do someday. Yeah, let's do that someday. But there's no real commitment behind it. It's just a notion to do. And then a few months later, I had a really bad business trip. And it was miserable. And I'm thinking, you know what? Life's short. Go hike the mountain. And I came home and I called up my friend. And I'm like, we have to go hike Kilimanjaro sooner rather than later. Life is short. Let's go do it. So yeah, we 6 months, it was about 6 months out, and this was like end of August, beginning of September, and we got in on a February hike for Kilimanjaro and started working really hard to get ready for that, and it was truly amazing experience. Oh, the mountains are my happy place, so it means a lot. I just love it out here. I unplug, I turn my phone off, I don't turn it back on until I get home. I just get away. I'm in front of screens all day long with work. Even when I'm not working, I tend to be in front of a computer screen to just get out here and recharge. It's life-changing to be able to come out here and do that. I do it a lot now that I can. 2007 was a really bad year because that's when I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. That's when, as part of getting a baseline for knowing where I was with rheumatoid arthritis, they took the x-rays of my hands and my feet and my lungs, and that's when the lung problem was found. And at the same time, they had me go for a bone density test, and it was kind of all part of the same package of just seeing where I was with all of this. And that's when I found out I had really bad bone density. That all came about all at the same time. So yeah, the news just kept getting worse with every doctor's appointment. And I had bone density tests starting in 2007 about every other year. And from 2007 to I started CrossFit in the end of 2013, my tests were the same. It was like, it wasn't really getting any worse, but it certainly wasn't getting any better. The numbers were really bad. And then starting with the tests I had after I started CrossFit, my bone density kept getting better, which was amazing to think about at my age, because I'm now 53. I'm really not supposed to be gaining bone density anymore. This is when people start losing it. And so I've consistently gained bone density with every test I've had since I've started CrossFit. So it's not just a coincidence because it was bad for a few tests in a row before starting CrossFit. And then the coincidence is it's not a coincidence. It was a direct result. My bone density is much better now. There's no way I'd make myself go through those workouts every day. Meeting the same people every day, the camaraderie you have from them, you pull each other through the workout. And really there's no way without the community that I'd ever be able to put myself through the workouts. They really make it happen. I had been in such a slow, gradual decline and never knew I was in such a slow, gradual decline before I started CrossFit that in looking back to where I was, I never would have started hiking again. So all the hiking I did would have never happened. The trips to Europe and the trips to Africa to hike never would have happened. I think with my riding, I probably would not be trying to seriously train my horse anymore. I think looking back now at how physically tiring having a riding lesson maybe and competing maybe, I think I would be like pleasure riding my horse a few times a week, just walking out a few times a week, or maybe doing some light work, but it would not be the type of riding I do now. And I feel so much healthier in general. CrossFit, for one thing, made me clean up my eating a lot. Still a lot of work to be done, definitely. But 2 weeks after I started CrossFit, I stopped drinking soda. And I had been a huge soda drinker. I used to work for Pepsi. I mean, I drank a lot of soda. But just 2 weeks into CrossFit, and I realized how much I was asking of my body and asking it to work. And then I'd be in the grocery store saying, I just worked really hard on myself, so why am I picking up this soda? I think my overall health is a lot better, not only from the working out aspect, but from the improved eating aspect as well. And that's a little bit unexpected, because when I went to CrossFit and had the introductory sessions and they were talking about nutrition in addition to the working out part, I honestly tuned out the nutrition part, because I'm like, I'm just here to work out. I don't care about the nutrition aspect. Let me show up and do my workout and leave, and don't bother me about nutrition. It even came with 1 or 2 meetings with a nutritionist as part of my membership, and I never went because it just wasn't something that I was interested in addressing at that point in time. But then as I get into CrossFit, I did. So I feel like not just from a physical fitness capacity in terms of, I can run, I can hike, I can do things without being exhausted. It's not just that. It's just because of the other changes it led me to make in my life. I am a much healthier person and in a much better place. And I think in looking back, I was very frail when I started CrossFit. And when I look at pictures of me before I started CrossFit, I'm like, that is a frail looking person. And if you think about if that downward trajectory had continued over the past 5 or 6 years, I would not be in a good place today. So it's really been a life changer in more than one way. One part of CrossFit that has helped me a huge amount outside of CrossFit that I really wasn't expecting it to. One part of that is the idea of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So obviously there's a lot of times in CrossFit where you don't feel that great during a WOD, but you learn that you can push through it and come out the other side, and you really aren't going to die regardless of how you feel at the time. And to give a real life example of how this idea of being comfortable with being uncomfortable has helped me was actually when I was on Kilimanjaro. So I've traveled halfway around the world for this bucket list hike. And on the morning of day 3, I woke up very altitude sick. So I couldn't eat. I tried to eat. I threw up. I threw up all day long on the trail while hiking. I really felt miserable. It feels very much like if you've just had a really bad case of the flu. Really, really weak and wobbly, and you're at altitude and you can't breathe and you can't eat, and it was just not a comfortable feeling. But CrossFit gave me that ability to understand I can push through when I'm maybe not feeling 100% fabulous, and I won't die on the other side. So part of what got me through that was the idea that I could be uncomfortable and live. The other area where CrossFit helped me hugely on Kilimanjaro when I felt so sick was breaking seemingly large impossible amounts of volume down into short-term goals that bring you to your long-term results. If I had sat back and thought, I feel this terrible, I still have 4 more days before I'm going to get to the summit of Kilimanjaro feeling like this, I really would have quit. But I kind of approached it the same way. You give it a huge amount of burpees to do. You have to do 200 burpees, and 200 burpees, at least for me, is like an impossible feat. But I can do 10 burpees, so okay, fine. I'll get through 10, and then I'll think about it and do another 10, and then another 10, and then I'm at 200, and I've done this huge amount of burpees that I never thought I could do in one stretch. And that was pretty much the same philosophy that I then applied to Kilimanjaro. Well, I can hike 1 more mile. Okay, I just made it through another mile. I can make it through another mile. And I did end up summiting, and the fact that I was able to just break that hike down into small pieces and just work each piece at a time while being uncomfortable. CrossFit's the only way I ever summited Kilimanjaro. I am convinced of it. And it's not just physical feats of labor that I apply this to. I actually apply it to work now too. I can have a really long to-do list at work, and I sit there and I actually like write down everything that's on my plate and deadlines, and I tape it to my computer, and I can look at that list and be like, there's no way. One person cannot tackle this list. But then I'm like, all right, fine. I look at the first due date. Let's just focus on that. Let's not look at the rest of the list right now. It's my first 10 burpees, and just focus one task at a time. And I get through it. It's really been a mindset that has helped me a lot, and it helped at the time. At one particular time at work, I had a boss who knew I had a very heavy workload, and he called me up. He's like, how you doing with it? How you managing this? And I started to explain that I approach it the same way as when I have a huge amount of burpees to do at CrossFit. And he cut me off and understood exactly what I was talking about, because he does CrossFit. He's like, totally get it. You're doing a great job. That's the perfect approach you need to take to this. So carry on. So those are definitely unexpected ways that CrossFit has benefited me hugely outside of CrossFit, and I'm really kind of grateful that I've been able to bring these learnings to areas outside of CrossFit.